Before Japanese imports made it a punchline, before the bailouts made it a headline, there was a factory in Flint, Michigan that could build an engine so dependable that taxi drivers ran them past 300,000 miles without touching the internals. Fleet buyers didn't ask what car they wanted. They asked if it had the Iron Duke. The factory that made it is a parking lot now. This is the story of Buick. Not the brand. The brand is still alive in name. This is the story of what Buick actually was. A company that built the car, that built General Motors, that outsold nearly everyone in America for a decade straight, that gave a generation of working families something they could point to with genuine pride, and the story of how every decision made afterwards slowly, then all at once, turned the most trusted name in American motoring into a brand you now find at rental counters and retirement communities. Before General Motors, before Ford's River Rouge, before any of it, there was David Dunbar Buick, a Scottish immigrant who arrived in Detroit as a child and made his first fortune doing something nobody remembers: plumbing fixtures. He held the patent on bonding enamel to cast iron. Every white bathtub in America in the 1890s owed something to David Buick. He sold the patent, took the money, and poured every dollar into engines. By 1903, Buick Motor Company was registered in Flint. By 1908, William Durant used Buick's profits as the seed capital to incorporate General Motors. Not Ford, not Chevrolet, Buick. The irony is that David Buick never saw any of it. He sold his stake early, made nothing from the empire his engines built, and died in 1929 working as an instructor at a Detroit trade school. His family had to pay for the funeral. But the car outlasted the man by decades, and for a long time, it was something worth outlasting him for. There was a phrase people used for Buick through the 30s, 40s, and 50s: the doctor's car. Not because doctors were the only ones buying it, because the doctor was the most trusted person in your town, and a Buick in his driveway meant something. It meant a man who had worked hard, done well, and had the judgment to buy quality without the vulgarity of buying a Cadillac. That positioning was earned. Buick sat exactly one rung below Cadillac in GM's lineup. More car than a Chevy. More restrained than a Cadillac. The choice of the man who knew what things were worth. In 1955, Buick was the third best-selling car brand in America. Not third in its segment. Third in the entire country, behind only Chevrolet and Ford. The Roadmaster, the Special, the Skylark. Built to be driven 100,000 miles and still feel solid on the highway. The straight-eight engine humming under a hood long enough to park a bicycle on. The first sign something was drifting came in chrome. Through the late 50s and into the 60s, Buick started borrowing styling decisions from divisions it was supposed to be above. The fins got taller, the chrome got wider, the interiors looked expensive from a showroom floor and felt cheap 6 years later. Buick was chasing the look of success rather than building the substance of it. The deeper problem was platform sharing. General Motors spread development costs by building multiple brands on shared underpinnings. Reasonable in theory, corrosive in practice, because once a Buick and an Oldsmobile and a Pontiac are built on the same chassis, trimmed from the same parts bin, the question becomes unavoidable. What exactly are you paying for? Then 1973 happened. Oil embargo, fuel prices doubling overnight, the market for large, heavy, thirsty American cars contracting almost immediately, and Buick, which had built its entire identity around exactly that kind of car, had no credible answer ready. Through the 70s, Buick did what American manufacturers did. It downsized grudgingly and leaned harder on the one thing it still had: reputation. The engines were genuinely good. The 3.8-liter V6 Buick developed became one of the most dependable power plants in American automotive history. Fleets bought it. Taxi companies swore by it. Consumer Reports cited Buick reliability figures that the rest of Detroit couldn't match. But the cars around those engines were getting harder to justify. Interior plastics that creaked. Assembly tolerances that varied by the day of the week the car was built. Then something happened that no reputation could survive. In 1977, GM installed Chevrolet engines in Oldsmobiles without telling buyers. People who had paid specifically for an Oldsmobile engine. The lawsuit cost money, but it cost something else too. Something companies spend decades building and lose in a single headline: the right to be believed. Buick wasn't directly implicated, but Buick was GM, and GM had just told the market that the name on the hood, didn't mean what anyone thought it meant. The 1980s were where it was decided, even if nobody said it aloud until much later. Buick's answer to Japanese competition was the same answer GM gave every problem that decade. A committee, a rebadged solution, and marketing language that promised what the product couldn't deliver. The buyers who had grown up with Buick were aging. The buyers who should have come up behind them were looking at Camrys and Accords and finding them more honest about what they were. Buick sold 800,000 cars in 1984, a number that looked strong in isolation, a number that masked where those sales were coming from: rental fleets, company carpools, buyers defaulting to a familiar name, not loyalty, gravity. Everything that followed was slower than a collapse and faster than a recovery. Sales fell year after year. Dealers that had anchored small city Main Street since the 30s began closing. Factory employment in Flint shrank through rounds of cuts that each felt final until the next one arrived. By 2009, when GM filed for bankruptcy, Buick survived the cut. Pontiac did not. Oldsmobile had already been retired. Buick survived because of China. In that market, the brand had accumulated something it had largely lost at home: prestige. GM now sells more Buicks in China in a month than in America in a quarter. The brand that built Detroit is sustained by Shanghai. The Buick City Complex in Flint, 500 acres that once employed 28,000 people on a single campus, was demolished between 2002 and 2010. No marker adequately explains what stood there, what the parking lot remembers. The cars still roll off lines today. The Enclave and the Envision move in reasonable numbers. They are competent, comfortable, forgettable vehicles that no one will remember the way anyone remembers the 1963 Riviera, or the sound of a Roadmaster's door closing with that particular solidity that engineers now calculate by algorithm. Buick as an idea, a car that meant something specific to a specific kind of American life, ended somewhere in the mid-80s. What carries the name now is a business arrangement between a surviving brand and a growing overseas market. It works on a spreadsheet. It doesn't work the way a 57 Roadmaster works when one pulls up next to you at a light and you understand immediately, without analysis, that someone once cared enormously about getting everything exactly right. David Buick died broke in a trade school, having built the engine of an empire he never profited from. The men who came after profited enormously and still needed saving twice in a century. The last Iron Duke engine rolled off the line in 1993. Somewhere in a fleet maintenance record, there is almost certainly a cab with 400,000 miles on one, still running. The company that made it is a rental car brand with Chinese shareholders now. That is not nothing, but it is considerably less than what it was.